Hello and welcome to another instalment of our occasional podcast called I Wish I Hadn't. I'm Dave Hill.
And I'm John Wyatt. As you can tell from our names, David and Jonathan, we were born in the 1950s, so we've had many years to accumulate embarrassing moments which we now feel happy to share.
The dictionary defines regret as a sorrowful remembrance, a sense of loss. But we're not in the business of sorrow and loss here. We're dealing with those things in life that we might wish had been otherwise, but which we're now prepared to own up to.
Today, we peer myopically into the images that we are still trying to erase from our memories. John, there must be certain films that you wish you'd never laid eyes on at any point in your life.
So many films, Dave. So many. Probably as many terrible films as I've seen really, really great ones. Probably, I would say if I was doing a worst film I've ever seen, it would be The Boat That Rocked.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. It had Gemma Arterton in it. You know, I'm a big fan of Gemma Arterton. Great soundtrack, but one of the worst films, with a very, very, very unfunny man, Nick Frost, Simon Pegg's sidekick.
Yes.
Man who thinks he's very funny and isn't. But that was a film that I actually regret going to see. But not only that, there are films I've seen that have actually disturbed me that I wish I hadn't seen for years after. Have you ever seen Carrie?
Yes, many, many years ago. Yes, it is. You are right. It is quite a disturbing film, particularly the ending, isn't it? Yes.
It comes up, and I can still see that one. Yeah, that's so two terrible films that I kind of wish I hadn't seen for different reasons. How about you? Have you got a worst ever?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not horror films that are not my sort of genre at all. I tend to rarely watch them, but that is one I do remember seeing. Yeah. I mean, one of the quite in recent history, one of the worst films I've seen was on recommendation. Somebody recommended this film as being brilliant and funny.
Was it me?
And it was a younger person who recommended it, I have to say, younger relation, and so we. My wife Lynn and myself, we sat down and we watched it one night because it was on the television, and it's a film called Crazy Rich Asians.
I heard of it, never seen it. I'll avoid it.
It is appalling. It is one of the most unfunny things that's ever been made, and yet certain age groups thought it was hilarious. And I just thought, no, I'm sorry, this is not doing it for me at all. I did watch it to the end just to see if there was something hilarious that was going to come along. But there wasn't. No. And the other one that I saw in the cinema, which again, I quite enjoyed the TV series, but I thought the film was distinctly unfunny and pathetic, was the film of Absolutely Fabulous.
Oh, right. Not seen that.
Don't know if you ever saw that. No. Oh, please don't. Please don't even bother to think about it.
Yeah.
It's dreadful.
It's funny when you say that you don't find things funny, because I've had some quite disturbing experiences when I've been in films and plays, and all around me are people laughing, and I just don't see what they're doing. And I'm thinking, is it them or is it me? I'm pretty sure it's them, actually.
I like to think it's them, John.
I can't think of the reverse where I've found something funny and nobody else around me is laughing. But I've definitely been to plays. I remember going to a play called The Accidental Death of an Anarchist, and everybody found it terribly funny. And I just thought to myself, this is just not funny.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with films still, the one that split Lynn and myself was a film we went to see. Moulin Rouge.
Oh yes,
the sort of the cod musical, and at the end of it, Lynn turned to me and said, "Wasn't that brilliant?" And I said, "No, it was awful."
Yeah.
If the little Frenchman had appeared from the corner of the tree once more, I think I'd have thrown something at it. It just got right up my nose. It really did.
Have you ever
really did.
Have you ever walked out of a film or a play?
Not walked out of a film, I don't think. My dad did. My dad walked out of The Longest Day.
Oh, right.
In Bridport, actually, at the cinema.
Okay.
We went to see it because it was about D-Day, and within about sort of 30 minutes, he decided that this film was basically saying, didn't the Americans do well to win the war for us? and walked out in disgust. That was it. Never went back in again.
Yeah.
Plays. There are two plays that, or one's a musical, one was a play that we have walked out of. One many years ago was a local amateur group were doing Fiddler on the Roof, which I like. I've been in it a few times, love the show.
Mm-hmm.
And this group were doing it in a theatre in Cannock, and the the people in it had obviously not been told that this was set in sort of Russia at the turn of the century when the pogroms were happening and Jewish villages were being cleared,
Yeah.
because they obviously had set it not on purpose but in the Black Country, because everyone's accent was pure Black Country. And so when it opened and Teviot the Milkman came on and just sang "If I Were a Rich Man," I thought, this is going all right. And then the group of young males came on, looking like Blues Brothers, basically, with little hats and black shirts and white ties on. God knows why. And then the first line that was delivered, someone said, "Teviot, I've now got my choice." We looked at each other and thought, "Oh my goodness me, this is going to be horrendous."
Obviously,
and
want to reflect on those terrible pogroms in West Bromwich that happened.
In West Bromwich, it was. And we actually, that was one where the interval came and we walked and kept walking.
Yeah.
Back to the car and went home.
Yeah.
The other one, which was sad really, because I don't know if you know, I love all the old Ealing comedies, and black and white Ealing. I think they're fantastic period pieces, and that you see all the Britain as it was at a certain time, and I just think they're beautifully constructed. And I foolishly decided that when a local group were doing a play version of The Lady Killers,
mm-hmm.
I thought, oh, that's one of my favourite films. I'd quite like to see that live on stage. And I'm afraid it just was so disappointing. It was nothing like the film at all. And it's another one where I said to Lynn, right, when we go into the bar at the interval, should we just keep going out the door? And she said, yes, please. And we did again. So that's twice. Halfway through, gone.
I don't
never look back.
Walked out of a play. I walked out of a couple of films. I remember a film at the Arts at Bridport Palace, which was a film society film, and it was a Russian film by Tarkovsky, very highly praised. Supposed to be really good. It was just boring as fuck. And so after about 15 minutes, just got up and went to the pub, which was better. I can think of a visual thing that isn't a film that I still wish I hadn't got in my memory, and that was the cover of a book of The Incredible Shrinking Man. Do you remember that book?
Yeah,
made it a film. And on the cover of this book, there is a little man and an enormous spider. About 5 or 6 times his size, and I've never got over the. I mean, I don't like spiders very much. I'm not exactly fond of them, but that is like a sort of a nightmare image that I've never been. I wish I hadn't ever seen that.
The sort of dread of thinking that could be me,
exactly,
and that could be the spider that's after me.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought another bit from a film too. Don't Look Now. Have you ever seen Don't Look Now?
Yes.
And the last bit of that when Donald Sutherland follows the little he thinks is his daughter in the red.
Yes.
And she turns around and it's this horrible sort of wizened old woman, and she sort of shakes her head and then oh dear, that's a really.
We ought to say spoiler alert there, didn't we, really, for anybody who's not seen it?
Yes, it's true, actually. Yeah, but who cares about that? Yeah.
One of the, just going off films and things really, but back to shows a little bit. One of the things I wish I hadn't seen because I couldn't control my laughter, I have to say, was a friend of ours was talking after a show that we'd been to see, or actually I think we might have been in. He was talking to the Lady Mayoress of Lichfield.
Mm-hmm.
In the bar as chairman of the society, and he was talking quite animatedly to her, and at the same time as he was talking to her, he had a handful of peanuts. And as he was talking, he was popping a peanut into his mouth and talking animatedly. And at one point, the lady mayoress, that's my Freudian slip, had her glass of wine at sort of like at sort of chest level, and a peanut, as he was talking, almost in slow motion to us, shot out of his mouth and into the glass of wine, sinking to the bottom. And he didn't notice it, and she didn't notice it. Amazingly, we did. And I can remember thinking in that awful sort of moment of, do we tell them
Yeah.
before she drinks it, or do we just ignore it because they haven't noticed it? And I had to say we did ignore it at the time. We turned away, went somewhere else. But I wish I hadn't seen it because I was crying with laughter when I turned around. Absolutely.
Really, you couldn't easily say, excuse me, but you've just spat a peanut into you.
You've just put a peanut in there.
I know, that's really not going to be easy to describe. Yeah.
I mean, on a similar theme, many years ago, oh, goodness me, it must be sort of 40 years ago, easily, if not more. I was in a play in a very small venue where another friend of ours, was doing a part and was quite animated, and he was shouting at someone and shouting out to the audience. And as he shouted, and this is gospel truth, his top set of false teeth flew out and into the lap of a lady on the front row, which was absolutely brilliant. And it was quite a serious bit in the play, but I'm afraid it all cracked up a little bit after that. And the lady sort of sat there with her hands up as if to say, oh, what do I do now?
Was he a trooper?
Which was a good.
Did he carry on without his teeth?
He did. He carried on. The people on stage with him were finding it very difficult to actually keep a straight face while this was going on. They were retrieved eventually.
Yes. I got to say one story that is a thing I wish I hadn't seen. It was the first house that we bought in Kingston. And the first guests that we had were friends, 3 friends: Robert, my friend, and Steve, and Steve's new girlfriend that we hadn't met. So they came around for a meal, and they were staying. The house, you had to go through the second bedroom to get to the bathroom. So Steve and this girl, whose name I can't remember, were sleeping in the second bedroom. So on the Sunday morning, I woke up, needed to go to the loo, go for a wee, and I thought, I've got to go through I knocked on the door, and no response. So I thought, well, probably still asleep. So I opened the door, looked around cautiously to see if they were still asleep, and I was greeted by the sight of Steve's bare arse moving up and down slowly, which is going to be very difficult to ever expunge this. And as I sort of, they must have heard the door open. Steve looked back over his shoulder, saw me, and smiled, and just carried on. I think I shut the door fairly quickly and went and had a wee in the garden because I didn't know. I mean, at the time I was terribly affronted because it was the first house. I was very house proud, and I thought this was, But now I just think it's a funny story. All the same, I wish I hadn't seen one of.
You wish you hadn't seen that. I mean, on a slightly similar theme, but not quite the same. When we had a 3-story house in near Lichfield. There was a time when some relatives came to stay. Now, I'm not going to mention any names here, no names, no backdoor, but there was a time where the bedrooms were on the top floor, and this elderly relative had decided that they wanted a shower.
Yeah.
I was downstairs in the kitchen, and they couldn't turn the shower on because of weakness of the wrist and everything. And so I was called to come up and sort the shower out. Now, obviously, I was walking up the stairs towards someone who was standing at the top of the stairs.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just clad in a T-shirt. And this elderly male relative was displaying the undercarriage, shall we say, because they only had a T-shirt on because they were expecting to go in the shower. It is a sight that has unfortunately stayed with me for a long, long time. You know that relative.
I do.
And
yes, who it was. Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're probably picturing it now, and I'm thinking, please don't,
Yeah,
because it was something I had to avert my eyes
I'm
from. I
sure
thought, no,
sausages
please.
were off the menu that morning for breakfast.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh dear, what a terrible thought. Um,
Was.
one thing that I really wish I hadn't got in terms of visuals is vertigo. And I don't know if you suffer
Right.
from it. I mean, it's a
No, no.
visual sort of defect, and it's really it's very unpleasant because there's that sort of feeling that you're going to fall off. I even look at pictures, those old pictures of steeplejacks on girders over, in
Yes.
sort of 1930s
Yeah.
New York. Even those, looking at a picture, make me feel queasy because I've just sort of,
Oh, really?
I mean, that's I've tried aversion therapy. I've tried sitting on top of walls, and I just feel really uneasy climbing up ladders, which is weird because when I was a kid, I used to climb up ladders and paint the side of the house. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I really wish I
Yeah.
didn't suffer from that, but I don't think there's any particular cure for it. Really, just don't go up
I think.
places.
I mean, it's one of those things that I do know a number of people who suffer from it, and I often wonder because they do say it can come on at any time, really, don't they? Vertigo. You can
Yeah,
not suffer from it for
it's
years,
a
and then
balance
it can.
thing, isn't it? Apparently, it's sort of
Yeah.
career thing. Yeah.
But no, I'm still able to go up quite high buildings, and in fact, the other day we went to Tamworth Castle,
Mhm.
which I know you've been to,
Yeah.
which was very good. I enjoyed that, and went right up to the top and looked out over Tamworth, which I remember thinking because I hadn't been up somewhere that high for a long time. I remember thinking, oh, I wonder if I'll still be okay, and I was absolutely fine. So
Yeah.
just one of those things. Yeah,
Unfortunately. And the
yeah.
other thing, Dave, that I think we can probably both identify with things that we wish we hadn't seen was our faces nowadays in mirrors.
Yes, that's very true. In fact, John, the one thing I will say is, well, there are certain mirrors in this house which I think are quite kind, and I don't know why, but the one in the bathroom I tend to use is a reasonably kind one. I find there are others in the house which basically say, "Oh, you're old."
I never thought of that concept of kind mirrors. I must investigate. I see if I can
Yeah,
find a kind mirror. Um,
I mean, it must be to do with where it is and how the light strikes it and stuff. But that one I look and think, oh, it doesn't look too bad, the face at the moment. But then I go and look in another one and I think, oh no, no. And of course, also seeing yourself in photographs as well.
yes.
I find, I mean, you get photographs taken and you think, oh, I'll probably look okay. And my comment so often is, who on earth is that old man
Exactly.
in that
That's
photo?
what I think. I'm walking along the road, you see your reflection in a shop window, and you think, what a decrepit old fart that is. And I realize
Absolutely.
it's me. Yeah. Oh,
Absolutely, yeah. I'll tell you one thing I know we both wish we hadn't seen.
mhm.
It actually harks back to I think something I think we might have mentioned in another of our podcasts were the glow sticks at a certain concert in London that we were both very disappointed with. And I remember seeing the glow sticks and thinking, this is not a good sign.
Okay.
I don't know if you remember, there were like glow necklaces that like luminous things
Really?
that
I
people
know
were
what you
wearing
mean. I don't
at that.
remember them. Was that
That it,
the top?
Oh, I remember them very well. I remember seeing these younger people with these sort of glow sticks and glow necklaces that
Right.
glowed in the dark, and thinking this is not what I associate with the sort of music that we want to hear from this particular person we're going to see.
Okay.
And and we were correct, obviously, weren't
Well,
we,
it's
at
funny,
that
you see,
time?
because that's not one of my memories. So it obviously didn't
Oh,
disturb me as much as it did you. It just shows that, memory is selective, isn't it, really? We've got
very,
we've got a lot that we've unpacked on visual, and there's probably still more to go, but
yes.
maybe we should call it a day with that. We can always revisit.
We could, and we can always revisit it in a number of podcast time. I would have thought.
Exactly. So,
Yeah,
the genie politely knocks on the door. We're pleased to see him. We're not wishing.
absolutely.
Hello, genie,
Yeah.
I say. And what are you going to ask
Is it?
them to?
Is it? Could I just ask? For the sake of political correctness, is it definitely a he, this genie, or have we got a gender neutral
That's a
genie at
very
all?
good point. I'm not sure that genies are sexed, are they? So
Probably
let's
not.
just say that
Yeah.
they knock on the door,
Yes. Okay. They knock on the door.
and we say,
Yeah.
"Hello, genie. Could you please remove from my memory? And what are you going to ask for?"
Well, it has to be. It has to be the elderly relative at the top of the stairs. Has to be.
Yeah, I can see that. I've got so much that I would like.
So can I, unfortunately, John.
Yeah, but I think I would actually say that image from The Incredible Shrinking Man, because it's kind of haunted
Okay.
me. And I read it when I was about 10 years old, and I've still got the book somewhere. I don't want to look at it again, um, but yeah, it's like a sort of a nightmare image from the past, really. As you said, I imagine myself in that situation. But
Yeah, yeah,
so I'd be
yeah.
happy to lose that from my memory.
Excellent, excellent. Well, it's been lovely to visit the things that we really don't want to see or which we haven't seen.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
So here we go.
Yeah.